Hello and namaskar, everyone. So, as we promised yesterday, in this particular chat or discussion, I'm going to share with you about my understanding of the entire corpus of Indian spiritual literature, and my understanding of it, how I have approached it, how I have understood it, and who all helped me to understand it, and how I sort of classify it from a very simple uh, literature that gets you into starting thinking about spirituality, and then how it takes you up to some very complex concepts and ideas. So the way I have read it is like any Hindu who's born into a Hindu family. You grow up listening to stories of Ram, Krishna, various Devi Devatas, and it's all anecdotal, whatever people have heard, whether in a village or town or cities or whatnot. You just grow up with the stories around you. In fact, there might be many, many Hindus who take birth and die without ever reading any of these literary works of literature, and of great spiritual significance, but still probably would know many stories, just what they have heard in the plays, the Ramayan's play that happens in around, just before Diwali in India, in every village, through theater, movies, grandma, grandpa telling stories, friends sharing stories, and so on and so forth. So you just grow up listening, and it forms an sort of an ecosystem or a context for you to know what is right and wrong, and context, and your own mental framework of dharma, of what Hinduism is, and you live with that. And since you are sort of surrounded by this whole culture and civilization, without ever reading a book, you think you know it quite a bit. But once you start to read, you definitely find a lot more, sort of depth, and you become a little bit more inward looking, and your spiritual journey definitely becomes a little bit more sort of rich. So the way I classify all these, literary work, they cover the horizontal layer of spirituality, as well as specialized layer of spirituality. So the way I look at it is, and of course, if you look at it, it's the whole literary work of Indian spirituality and culture and civilization is split into Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is what you have heard, and then you have sort of thought over it, and the Smriti is, what you have memorized, and then you churn over it. The path that is described in the spiritual journey is through three words. Nididhyasan means reading, Chintan means thinking about it, and Manan means constantly keeping it in your heart. So that is the way to absorb the knowledge and wisdom of Hindu civilization, or the work of the literary work. At a very simple level, for an uninitiated, but for them also, that they can understand. Now, all this work, corpus of body of spiritual literature, has been created over thousands of years by various rishis and maharishis and people who have, spent their lifetime thinking about and disseminating the wisdom of this complex philosophy of Sanatan Dharma that we have been talking about. And India has always been a society of, there is no concept of copyright, that it's your book so you can't share or discuss with anywhere. There is no concept it's considered universal wisdom. It's considered, you're not supposed to profit from it. It's supposed to be given for free, because it's supposed to be good for everybody. And even till recently, before Britishers started this whole concept of education in India, where you have to pay fees to get educated, and you get a certificate and all, education in India was given for free in gurukuls that were there in every village. and teachers would disseminate knowledge, and no teacher ever asked for a fees, but parents of the kids donated, you know, the items of need to the teacher, who used to be mostly Brahmins, and their Brahmins' needs were taken care of by the community. And that's why this whole idea of paying for things did not exist in India. And people were partake and share with whatever they have, and they took care of each other. That's how the community and civilization survived for thousands of years. And that was true not just for teachers, but you know, for tradesmen, whether it's smith who's making your arms and equipment, a barber who's cutting your hair and providing that service, or पॉटरी मेकर, कुम्हार जिसको कहते हैं, जो आपके यहाँ घड़े मटके देते थे, उन सबको कभी कोई पैसे का आन लेन देन नहीं होता था. बस जो फसल उगती थी किसान की, उसमें से एक एक हिस्सा सबको बांट दिया जाता था. सो दैट्स हाउ द होल कल्चर इज़ बिल्ट ऑन दान एंड दक्षिणा, you know, that you give, and you feel thankful that there are people who are willing to take your dakshina and taking care of you. So society developed on this mutual understanding and mutually taking care of each other, because Indian society is not mercantilist society or a capitalist society, what like British or Western civilization is. So this whole concept of that you pay for service right then and there is a mercantilist system. It's not an Indian civilizational or a cultural system. And so for thousands of years, even a knowledge or a wisdom or a seer or a rishi, when he sort of grew spiritually and his model of the spirituality becomes clear, he would speak, and they would travel from village to village or town to town giving sermons. People would come to listen to sermons and bow in respect, and society would take care of them. That's how Buddha, when he achieved nirvana, he traveled all over northern part of India. Guru Nanak, he traveled all over from Middle East to Far East and South down India. Every rishi, maharishi has always had ashram. People would come and stay in their ashram for free. Community and society and the king of that local area would take care of things, because the whole pursuit of Indian culture and civilization is mukti. And mukti comes from seeking the knowledge, pragyanam brahma. And knowledge is given for free by seers, because they didn't go and buy it from anywhere. It came through the grace of the universe. So how can they charge for it when they didn't, sort of buy it from anywhere? So this whole idea and concept of कि आपके पास जो ज्ञान आपके अंदर से उपजा है, that has grown inside of you through the grace and blessings of the past teachers and rishis and maharishis that you have been blessed with, you don't charge for it. And even till today, I would think many of seers and people of higher spiritual level and consciousness, they'll never ask for money. I know at least Murari Bapu, who does Ramayana Katha everywhere, he doesn't charge a pie. And probably there are many more across the world, across in India at least, I would say, that as long as you take care of their needs, they don't need any money, they don't charge any money, because that's what you earn money for, to take care of your needs. But if the community and the society is taking care of it, you really don't charge for it. And that's why the spiritual books in India, whether it's Ramayana, Mahabharata, any Puran, any Brahma Sutras, any book, they are so cheap. You can, because they're highly subsidized by the rich and famous people of the community, like Gita Press Gorakhpur. I tell everyone that you can buy a Bhagavad Gita in India, Srimad Bhagavat, Ramayana, for less than the price of a sandwich and a soda. So in India, if you go to McDonald's, you'll pay probably 500, 700, 800 rupees to get just a small tiny burger and French fries and Coke, while you can buy a Bhagavad Gita for 150 rupees. In fact, you can buy a Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, and a couple of Puranas for that meal. And while whatever food, McDonald's food you would eat, you'll forget in an hour, while the wisdom you'll gain out of those books will stay with you forever. So that whole idea of disseminating the cultural and civilizational and the spiritual knowledge for free still exists in India. And I think it's, again, becoming stronger that you do. Nothing should be charged, because nature and universe has provided this to you. So in my, how I if you have to say from level 1 to level 10 in terms of complexity and dealing with the complex ideas of uh, Indian spiritual parlance, at the bottom or the most simple is the Ramayana, and that too Ramayana written by Swami Tulsidas, Goswami Tulsidas. Uh, Everybody knows Ram and the story of Ram in India, whether they have read Ramayana or not, because it's so around you that you can't imagine India without Ram or Krishna for that matter. So Ramayana, everybody knows it, whether they have read it or not, and everybody, whether they have given attention to it or not, their value system is formed by the story of Ramayana to a certain extent in various ways. So Ramayana is the simplest of the text. It is a summation, and Goswami Tulsidas says it in the Ramayana, that it's a summary of Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads, and everything else. But the way he has composed that poem of 18,500 verses or so, or Chopai, is just, adbhut. There is no word to describe the beauty, the peace that you get while reading it, the poetic excellence out of it. Everybody knows the characters of Rama, because Ramayana has been written in every Indian language, in every regional Rishi and Maharishi has written it in their own way. The 80 to 90% of the story does not change what was written by Valmiki in Sanskrit thousands of years ago, but it's poetic. It has been kept relevant over generations, over thousands of years, by various sages and seers across various parts of India. So in Kerala also there is Ramayana in Malayalam, written by some famous sage, in Tamil Nadu, in Tamil, Bengal, everywhere. Ramayana is one common cultural, civilizational, spiritual text that binds the Hindu civilization, Sanatan Dharma, wherever the Hindus live, from Far East to Guyana to America to anywhere. It's the thread in which every spiritual, impactful formulation of what universe is, how to live in this universe, how to behave in it, that tells you dharma, karma, everything is weaved in that story, and it's the thread that holds everything together. So Ramayana, and then I would say Mahabharata, another story that binds India together. And I think I never noticed it before, but it has become very prevalent to know that the story of Ramayana goes north to south of India, connecting various important places, and Mahabharata travels from east to west. So there are characters in Mahabharata from Gandhar, which is in Afghanistan, Kandahar, what is called now. So that's because it was all part of India or Bharat, and the story weaves all the way up to Far East to Manipur and all. So just by looking at these two texts, that one connects north to south, one connects east to west, and that is the cultural boundaries of India, you might say. And it was part of geographical boundary as well. And if you go even before 1947, India was all the way from Afghanistan to Burma and top to bottom. So that's the cultural and civilizational boundary, to a certain extent overlap with the geographical boundary as well. So these two texts, and people who have not read it, they should definitely read it. They are so beautiful that you'll feel like reading again and again. So Mahabharata and Ramayana are at the basic foundation of what, if you want to understand what Hindu culture, civilization. And as you are reading them, you will also notice that Ramayana invokes the spiritual side of you, or gives you the definition of dharma, and almost makes you an inward and spiritual. Mahabharata, on the other hand, almost teaches you how to use dharma when it comes to living in this life. And there is every imaginable character in Mahabharata that they go through various situations and come across this dilemma of what to do, and by how they have gone about behaving in their world, in their context. You will see that if you read that story couple of times, there is no imaginable situation that you will not come across that you can find a correlation in महाभारत. उसमें कोई ऐसी कहानी नहीं है महाभारत में जिसके साथ आप जुड़ ना सकें. अपनी लाइफ के किसी ना किसी मौके पे आपको उदाहरण महाभारत से मिल जाएगा कि वहाँ पे क्या सही है और क्या गलत है. तो ये दोनों हैं कि एक आपको अंदर की तरफ ले जाता है और एक आपको भी बताता है कि आपको इस जो बाहर का समाज है इसके साथ आपको कैसे डील करना है. फिर इसके ऊपर अगर मैं कहना चाहूँ तो महाभारत में से ही एक पर्टिकुलर संवाद है जिसको भागवत गीता कहा है. और वो भागवत गीता क्या है कि जब अर्जुन डर जाते हैं, उनका रथ आ जाता है कौरव पांडव के बीच में, वो भगवान कृष्ण से कहते हैं कि आप मुझे वहाँ ले जाइए. वो जो संवाद है वो भगवत गीता है. वो एक चैप्टर का भी एक छोटा सा पार्ट है महाभारत का. तो आप ये देखिए कि महाभारत में पूरी में इतनी गीताएं निकली हैं, जिसमें कि भीष्म कृष्ण संवाद है जिसमें वो युधिष्ठिर को बताते हैं कि राजपाट कैसे किया जाता है, जो अंत में आता है. और ऐसे ऐसे बड़े संवाद हैं जो अपने आप में ही इतने गहरे हैं कि अगर आप उसी संवाद के ऊपर ही पूरे जीवन चिंतन मनन करते रहें तो भी आप सच्चिदानंद के चरणों में पहुंच जाएंगे. यू विल स्टिल रीच द सेम पॉइंट ऑफ स्पिरिचुअल अपलिफ्टमेंट. सो you should read all of these ones, these texts, and I'm sure there are sections of these texts that will resonate with you so much that it's almost like saying that you do your graduation, undergrad, जिसको BA MA को कहते हैं, उसके बाद आप फिर मास्टर्स करने जाते हैं. तो आप अंडरग्रेड को तो ऐसा समझ लीजिए कि आपने महाभारत पढ़ ली. मास्टर्स के लिए आप समझ लीजिए कि आप भगवत गीता पे स्पेशलाइजेशन करने जा रहे हैं, क्योंकि मास्टर्स में यू हैव टू राइट ए थीसिस. और फिर अगर आप जब PhD करने जाएंगे तो आप ये समझ लीजिए कि उस महाभारत का, भगवत गीता का एक सूत्र ही अगर आप ढंग से चिंतन मनन कर लेंगे तो आपको वहीं परम के चरणों में बिठा देगा. इट विल टेक यू टू दैट हाइट ऑफ सुप्रीम कॉन्शियसनेस. दैट्स अ गुड वे टू थिंक अबाउट इट. इसके अलावा फिर पूरे इन द कॉर्पस ऑफ इंडियन स्पिरिचुअलिटी फिर पुराण आ जाते हैं. पुराण भी 111 माने जाते हैं. शिव पुराण है, लक्ष्मी पुराण है, गणेश पुराण, जितने देवी देवता हैं सबके पुराण हैं. उनको आप ऐसा समझ लीजिए कि आप जैसे यूनिवर्सिटी में कोई इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ना चाहता है, कोई मैथमेटिक्स पढ़ना चाहता है, मैथमेटिक्स में भी फिर आप स्पेशलाइजेशन करना चाहें तो मास्टर्स PhD पे भी कर सकते हैं. बट विद इन अंडरग्रेड कोई इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ रहा है, कोई इंजीनियरिंग पढ़ रहा है, इंजीनियरिंग में कोई सिविल इंजीनियरिंग कर रहा है, तो वो पूरा पौराणिक लिटरेचर है. और पौराणिक लिटरेचर भी उतना ही इम्पॉर्टेंट, महत्वपूर्ण और गहरा है जितना कि ये रामायण और महाभारत का लिटरेचर है. तो और ये ऐसा समझा गया है कि ये सब दीज आर वेरियस वेज ऑफ एक्सप्लेन ईच एंड एवरी. और आप एक को पकड़ लीजिए, ऐसा नहीं कि आपको सब पढ़ने हैं, पर एक बार तो सबको पढ़ने में का आनंद है, आप पढ़िएगा. लेकिन इसके बाद अगर आप एक को भी पकड़ लेंगे तो वो भी आपके सारे संशय इस पूरी कायनात को लेकर वैसे ही सॉल्व करेंगे जैसे कि आप किसी को भी पकड़ लें. तो आप अगर गरुड़ पुराण को भी अच्छे से समझ जाएं तो भी आप परम के चरणों में पहुंच जाएंगे. आप अगर श्रीमद् भागवत पकड़ लें तो भी आपके सारे संशय वैसे ही क्लियर हो जाएंगे. आप शिव पुराण को पकड़ लीजिए तो भी. तो आप जिस देवता के प्रति भी आपकी भावनात्मक शक्ति हो, आपकी स्पिरिचुअल शक्ति जुड़ती हो, आप उसी देवता का हाथ पकड़ लीजिए और वो ही देवता आपको परम के चरणों में ले जाएगा. तो ये अपने आप में एक बहुत ही बड़ा साइंटिफिक क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ लिटरेचर मैं मान सकता हूँ. और ये मैंने रियल लाइफ में भी देखा है दैट when somebody becomes a PhD in either biology, molecular biology, physics, mathematics, economics, they become equally efficient at solving problems of any sphere within their real world. And I have seen it personally in my life as well, and anybody else. Because whatever field of study you choose to go in depth, it's helping you to give you a tool set that you can apply in any context, in any situation. वो इंडिया के महर्षि और ऋषियों ने सोची हजारों साल पहले वो सूत्र पकड़ लिया था. तो इन्हीं पौराणिक कहानियों के हिसाब से और पौराणिक लिटरेचर के हिसाब से वो जीवन के आपके सारे संशय सॉल्व कर देते हैं. अच्छा, उन्होंने फिर क्वेश्चन आएगा कि इन्होंने इतने पुराण क्यों बनाए? क्योंकि अब जितने लोग हैं सबकी अलग अलग भावनाएं हैं, अलग अलग विचारधारा है, तो जिसको जो सूट करे वो अपने चूज़ कर ले. सो टू मेक इट एक्सट्रीमली ईजी फॉर ईच एंड एवरी सोल, ईच एंड एवरी बीइंग, दैट वॉट एवर देयर natural dispensation is, they can catch hold of that particular literary piece and reach the same end goal that anybody else would reach. And I think that's the generosity, large-heartedness, brilliant thought, and the most compassionate of compassion mind who can think of such thing. ताकि कन्याकुमारी से लेके और कश्मीर की चोटी तक और अफ़गानिस्तान से लेके और फार ईस्ट तक कहीं पे कोई ऐसा प्राणी ना बचे कि जो ये कह सके कि मुझे इसमें कहीं कोई चीज़ पसंद नहीं आ रही. जिसकी मुक्ति जिस मार्ग से हो सकती थी उसके लिए वही मार्ग उन्होंने खोल दिया. इसीलिए इतने पुराण हैं. अब पुराणों के ऊपर जो मैं सोचता हूँ जो आते हैं वो आते हैं उपनिषद. अब उपनिषद क्या हैं? उपनिषदों के ऊपर फिर आते हैं वेद, और वेदों के भी ऊपर आते हैं ब्रह्मवाक्य, एज पर माई क्लासिफिकेशन. या आप ये समझ लीजिए कि उपनिषदों के ऊपर आते हैं ब्रह्मवाक्य और ब्रह्मवाक्यों के ऊपर आते हैं वेद, इफ़ दैट मेक्स इट ईजी फॉर यू. क्योंकि यहाँ पे कुछ लोग आई डोंट वांट पीपल टू गेट इट टू आर्ग्यूमेंट. जो आपका मन करे, जैसे आप समझे, जैसा मैंने समझा मैं वैसे बता रहा हूँ. अब उपनिषद क्या है? जो वेदों में, जैसे कि मैंने बताया महाभारत में इतने संवाद हैं कि हर एक संवाद अपने आप में एक लिटरेरी पीस बन जाता है. उसी हिसाब से वेद जो हैं 4, उनमें पूरी व्याख्या की गई है मंत्रों के द्वारा. विभिन्न ऋषियों महर्षियों ने जो भी उन्होंने साइंटिफिकली स्पिरिचुअल कॉन्शियस साइंस से जो पाया वो वेदों में अर्पित हो गया. वेद 4 हैं, सब जानते हैं. अब उन वेदों में भी कुछ एक ऐसे सेक्शन हैं कि जो सिर्फ ब्रह्म और ब्रह्म को कैसे पाया जाए और ब्रह्म को कैसे जाना जाए, जो इस संवाद को लेके और या इस गुत्थी को सुलझाते हैं. उसमें से उपनिषद निकले. तो 11 तो मेन उपनिषद हैं, वैसे 111 टोटल उपनिषद माने जाते हैं. अब वो 11 उपनिषद भी अगर आप पढ़ लें, और ये कहीं से भी आपको लिस्ट मिल जाएगी, मांडुक्य उपनिषद है, छांदोग्य उपनिषद है, इसी तरह से 11 हैं. हर एक उपनिषद उसी सवाल का जवाब दे रहा है, लेकिन अलग अलग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, कि ब्रह्म क्या है, तुम कौन हो, और ब्रह्म को कैसे पाया जाए. अब इसके ऊपर आते हैं ब्रह्मवाक्य. वो अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ी वो है कि अगर कोई आदमी इतना शार्प है कि जब उसने रामायण पढ़ ली, महाभारत पढ़ ली, समझ गया, और भी थोड़ा और ऊपर पहुंचा स्पिरिचुअल कॉन्शियसनेस में, उसने पुराण भी पढ़ लिए, तो थोड़ा सा और ऊपर पहुंचा, उपनिषद पढ़ लिए. उपनिषदों में भी फिर ऐसे एक जैसे E=mc². अब कोई PhD कर लेगा तो वो फटाफट उसको समझ जाएगा कि ये कहाँ से कॉन्स्ट्रक्ट हुआ, कैसे डिराइव हुआ, कैसे अप्लाई होता है. उसी तरह से ब्रह्म वाक्य हैं जिनमें एक ही सूत्र, जैसे अहम ब्रह्मास्मि, मैं ब्रह्म हूँ, ये एक ब्रह्म वाक्य है. ये इट इज़ इक्वल टू E=mc² एंड प्रॉब्ली मोर पोटेंट देन E=mc² और मे बी इक्वली पोटेंट. अगर इसके ऊपर भी कोई चिंतन मनन किसी गुरु के पास बैठ के करता रहे, और जिस गुरु ने खुद को ब्रह्म जान लिया हो, साक्षात शाश्वत, वो ही ऐसे ब्रह्म वाक्य को समझा सकता है किसी को. यहाँ पे ये बात बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है कि ये कहा जाता है कि उपनिषद जो हैं सुनने से ही समझ में आते हैं, पढ़ने से समझ में नहीं आते. और ये अपने आप में बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज़ है कि जब आप PhD आप किसी एडवाइज़र के साथ ही कर सकते हैं, बिना एडवाइज़र के PhD नहीं होती. पढ़ तो लेंगे आप सारा लिटरेचर, लेकिन क्योंकि आपको वहाँ पे कुछ एक नया गुत्थी सुलझानी है. PhD तभी थीसिस आपकी अप्रूव होती है ताकि आप कोई नई गुत्थी सुलझाते हैं. अब यहाँ पे कोई कहेगा कि नई गुत्थी तो नहीं सुलझ रही, सबको पता है अहम ब्रह्मास्मि, लेकिन यहाँ पे बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट बात है कि गुरु की गुत्थी सुलझी हुई है. पूरा पहले सदियों शाश्वत वो गुत्थी सुलझी हुई है कि हम ही ब्रह्म हैं. लेकिन फिर नई गुत्थी किसकी सुलझ रही है? जो पास में बैठा है गुरु के, जो शिष्य बना है, उसके लिए तो नई गुत्थी सुलझ रही है. ये जो PhD थीसिस वो लिख रहा है, ये दुनिया के लिए नहीं लिख रहा, वो अपने लिए लिख रहा है. और जिस दिन उसकी थीसिस लिखी जाती है उसको भी ब्रह्म का शाश्वत ज्ञान हो जाता है. तो इसीलिए कहा जाता है कि उपनिषद, ब्रह्म वाक्य, ये जो हैं ये गुरु के चरणों में ही बैठ के सीखे जाते हैं, इसलिए उपनिषद कहा जाता है. उप मतलब जो बैठे पास में. तो ये भी बड़ा इक्वलेंस यहाँ पे आ जाता है कि पीएचडी भी अब इन मटेरियल वर्ल्ड या मॉडर्न ब्रिटिश सिस्टम्स जो सेटअप किया है वेस्ट ने, पीएचडी एडवाइज़र के साथ आप करते हैं, लेकिन आप दुनिया को प्रूव करते हैं कि मैंने कुछ नया इजाद किया है, दुनिया उसके बेसिस पे आपको जॉब वॉब देती है, आपका एक सर्टिफिकेशन हो जाता है। तो ये जो फिज़िकल वर्ल्ड में हम पीएचडी लेके फिर कमाते हैं, ये तो हो गया इंटेलेक्चुअल लेवल पे आप किसी चीज़ के ज्ञानी हो गए, आपने पैसा कमाया, वो आपने यूज़ किया। लेकिन यहाँ पे स्पिरिचुअल वर्ल्ड में, इंडिया में और भारत की सभ्यता में जो होता था कि आप गुरु के पास में बैठ के निधिध्यासन चिंतन मनन से, गुरु के सानिध्य से अपनी गुत्थी सुलझाते थे कि मैं कौन हूँ। और जिस दिन वो गुत्थी सुलझ जाती थी, आप शाश्वत सनातन अपने को सच्चिदानंद जान के फिर आप आगे की जनरेशन्स के लिए वो रास्ता मार्ग प्रशस्त करते थे और स्वयं भी मुक्त होकर जीते थे। फिजिकल वर्ल्ड में जो पीएचडी होती है वो फिजिकल लेवल की मुक्ति देती है आपको। इंडिया की जो पीएचडी थी, जो गुरु के सानिध्य में आप पाते थे, वो आपको आत्मिक लेवल पे आपको मुक्त कर देती थी। ये दोनों डिफरेंस अगर आप पकड़ पाए हों, ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है। और फिर तो बस यही पूरा एक कॉर्पस ऑफ लिटरेचर और इसकी जो पैकिंग ऑर्डर है, ये मैं आपसे शेयर करना चाहता था। इसमें जो सबसे बड़ी बात आ जाती है, इसमें गुरु की बड़ी महत्ता है। और गुरु शिष्य परंपरा ही ऐसा है कि आप बचपन से ही एडवाइज़र अगर पकड़ लें, अगर आप मानने जाते हो, तो यहाँ पे आपका गोत्र और ये सब फिर बड़ा इम्पॉर्टेंट हो जाता था। और चलिए, इसके गुरु शिष्य परंपरा में मैं अलग से वीडियो बनाऊंगा, बिकॉज इट्स अ डिटेल टॉक इन इटसेल्फ। अब इसमें थोड़ा सा एक मैं अगर और ऐड करूँ ये स्पिरिचुअल लिटरेचर को लेकर, कि इसमें कोई छुआछूत या ये सब नहीं है। जैसे वेस्ट में एक प्रेवलेंस है कि इंडिया में कास्ट सिस्टम ये वो नहीं कर सकता था। इस देखिए कि ब्रह्म सूत्र से लेकर वेदों तक से लेकर फिर उपनिषद, फिर पुराण, फिर रामायण महाभारत में से भी गीता वगैरह निकाल के जो जिस लायक है वो वहीं से पढ़ना शुरू कर दे, और कोई भी पढ़ सकता है। ये ज्ञान ऐसा नहीं था कि इसको नहीं मिलेगा उसको नहीं। ये जो वेस्ट में एक थोड़ी सी लोगों ने फैला दिया ना, दिस कॉन्सेप्ट दैट इन इंडिया देयर इज कास्ट सिस्टम, यू कैन डू दिस, इट वाज नॉट बेस्ड ऑन दिस, इट वाज बेस्ड ऑन व्हाट यू आर capable of, what you are qualified of. Like even in our day-to-day life in America, everywhere we see, not everybody is capable of doing a PhD in molecular biology or theoretical physics. It's, if you are capable, you do it. Some are capable of doing a undergrad, some are capable of doing a master's, some can go up to PhD level, some just do high school. But nobody goes hungry. Those who go to high school, they learn how to do gardening and smithy, and they make that much money. So there was no classification. It was based on your internal desire and capability and your focus and dedication, how far you want to go, and how serious and committed you are towards acquiring this knowledge. And that's why in India, when you see sadhus wandering in India, you'll be surprised to see the Brahmins out of this who are born in Brahmin family might be less than 1%. 99% are from various Hindu panths and castes, who are walking from north to south, east to west of India. And these sadhus have played a very important role. Wherever sadhu went, he always gave a certain gyan. The communities and societies, the kings and the richest of the richest man would fall into the feet of these wandering monks, and for this little nectar of wisdom that can free their soul or make them achieve nirvana or mukti. So the whole idea of this, how in India various sages and saints have acquired nirvana and mukti, the path and what got them there, they kind of shared it with the masses for free. It got codified in these literary texts. There is nothing more to be written actually. And the beautiful thing is, everybody in their generations have written their own interpretations of all this. One reason why Sanatan Dharma has always stayed fresh and will stay fresh and has lived forever and will live forever, because it's a very open architecture. Anybody can interpret anything, publish it, people might agree with it, not agree with it, but there is nobody who can say you are wrong or chop his head, like in Islamist or Christian or the Abrahamic religions. One reason why India is such an open architecture society is primarily because the wisdom and knowledge is considered free, open, available to interpretation. Just like I'm talking in this, making these vlogs. Now, you can like it, you might discard it, But you can't stop me from thinking. You can't stop me from publishing. You might find some nuggets in this useful. You might find the rest of his garbage. That's up to you. So it's always the receiver, the person who's walking the path is important. And the path is already laid out. There are people who are willing to help you out. So the entire plethora of wisdom in India, spiritual wisdom, cultural wisdom, always existed from eons, will exist from eons. Open architecture, codified in some of these literary works from Vedas to Brahmavakyas, Brahma Sutras. And on Brahma Sutras, there are Shankaracharya's commentaries. I have literally, I have a guru who gave me the mantra, which I have recite day and night. And thanks to that inward journey of my mind, it has taken me to some amazing phenomenal teachers that I've met across. Murari Bapu, I've heard a lot, has had tremendous influence on me. Osho, I've heard since I was in 10th grade. He's probably one commentator who has had tremendous influence on me in life, and I enjoyed it. Then came along Swami Anubhavananda, who still preaches. I still listen to his lectures. I've had a chance to meet him once. My own guru, Sadguru Devra Hans Baba, close to Vrindavan, near Vindhyavasini. And then the guru who has really helped me to understand Upanishads, Brahmavakyas, is Swami Akhandanand. He's no more. He gave up his soul in 1983. He has his ashram in Vrindavan, Anand Ashram. But thanks to Birlaji, he was a guru of Birlaji as well. Birlaji recorded some of his lectures that he used to give in Birlaji's garden in early 70s, codified in black and white, that I found on YouTube about 7 years ago, 2013, 14. And then his rest of his audio recordings, some of his disciples have uploaded, and I have spent hours and hours and hours and months and weeks and years listening to his commentary on all the Upanishads and Brahmavakyas, Brahma Sutras. And literally, I have read these books on my own before, but it's truly what is said is absolutely right, that unless and until a realized master explains it to you, you'll never be able to figure it out. So I'll stop right there. It's becoming a long talk, but just wanted to share with you all how I have understood various Indian corpus of spiritual literature and how it can help in various ways and how to kind of approach it, and where to start, where to end. It's up to you based on how comfortable you are, how strong you feel, how mature you are, how far along you are in your spiritual path. Enjoy yourself. Let me know your comments. Hopefully you like it. Bye. Namaskar, everyone.